I sent a note to Mark Andreessen, this was a couple years back before Elon got it, and I said, Mark, do you ever rue the day we put Java with the Netscape browser and created the internet? You know, we were the first company to ship TCP IP on every computer we shipped. We invented NFS. We invented Java. These are all open source technologies. We popularized Unix. We did a ton of things. My #1 tweet is defund Harvard. And I got into Harvard and Stanford. My mom says, go to Stanford, be a playboy. My dad said, go to Harvard and make something of yourself. And the real cost of all of this non-education that I got in those two places is Gates, Balmer, Jobs, Ellison, the Google boys, Zuckerberg, all these guys quit early. And I got way behind them.
It's another beautiful day here in Lake Tahoe on July 10th, 2024. Today I have a very special guest joining me, the original pioneer of Silicon Valley, Scott McNealy. As co-founder and CEO of Sun Microsystems, Scott grew the company from conception into a Silicon Valley giant with revenues exceeding $200 billion over the 28 years in business. Through his visionary leadership, Scott was able to achieve some pretty remarkable things, including popularizing the concept of network computing, creating one of the world's most popular and widely used programming languages, Java, as well as having a huge impact in Silicon Valley in general, employing over 40,000 people, many of whom have become Silicon Valley leaders themselves. Scott, welcome to Tahoe Minds.
Thanks. That was actually pretty good. You got almost all of it right. I would say we're over 30 years when Larry Ellison and Oracle bought us, and I think we employed in my tenure there as chairman and president, we had 235,000 employees cycle through Sun Microsystems.
Wow,
so,
wow, that's incredible.
I think 42,000 was our peak, 42.5 or
wow,
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing research and I couldn't believe how many incredible people came from Sun. I mean, Doug Leone, a longtime MP at Sequoia, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, I didn't know he was there, former CEO of Google, former CFO, former CEO of Yahoo, co-founder of NVIDIA. I mean, the list goes on. It's insane.
BEA, we added it up. At one point, there were over 200 former Sun people who were CEOs in the technology industry around the world. So I don't know what the number is now, but everybody looked at me and said, if he can do it, I can. So I think that was the main motivation and developmental role that I played.
I see. All right, let's take a step back and talk about how you started your career in manufacturing. And you often talk about how your first few job experiences give you more in 6 months than 4 years of college does for you.
Yeah.
What do you think that?
Yeah, I'm a mostly negative on almost every higher ed environment and mostly government schools, because I don't think governments teach the private sector. I think government sector union teachers overrun the agenda of educating our kids to be self-sustaining and contributing to the economy and the marketplace. So I went to college.
Didn't go to any college.
It was a very substandard. My #1 tweet is defund Harvard out there right now. I studied economics, which taught me how to be the chief economic advisor to the President of the United States. But we only need one of those every 4 years, so it's sort of an overdone major. But
and why did you want to go there in the first place?
Harvard? My dad went there. And I got into Harvard and Stanford. My mom says, go to Stanford, be a playboy. My dad said, go to Harvard and make something of yourself. And I think both were right at the time. There was sort of a crossover, but now both of them are kind of, don't send your kids to college. Let them go get a job. My first job out of school, I was on the golf team. The Harvard golf team was like the Florida State's snow ski team, and I was captain of a team where basically nobody could break 80, but I had a pretty good run in the last bit, and I hit 1 OB on the second to last hole, and I missed going to the NC2As. And so I called my dad and I said, oh, Dad, I'm graduated now and golf season's over. I don't have a job, so he sent me to my old hockey coach, who was a member at our club, and he interviewed me and he sent me down to Centralia, Illinois in the dead of summer. and I was working at a plastics plant, sort of like The Graduate, where they said, plastics. So I got into plastics, and we were making truck hoods. In fact, I got put immediately, 3 days into it, I was made foreman of the hood bonding line that supplied all of the Corvette fiberglass hoods. It was the most profitable plant in General Motors at the time, and they had to get 260 hoods out every day or we shut down. So there was a little stress, and the people put me through the ringer, see if I was working for them or if they were working for me, and I figured out I was working for them in a hurry. And eventually I had nothing to do because they just made the thing run by itself, and I learned the biggest lesson. You work for the people that report to you, and if you do that, they will work hard for you. So they didn't teach me that at business school or at Harvard. They didn't teach me anything. I learned all of it just so much by being a plant scheduler, reliability engineer, foreman, and a sales rep, all in Rockwell's plastics division in their automotive operations. And I moved around several different places, went through strikes, had my hotel woken up with bomb threats, had to push my car when I was driving through the picket line. I'm 21 years old and had like, whoa, I don't have my hockey equipment on. So it was quite a learning experience. I went back to business school for 2 years. I don't know why, other than I couldn't get in the first year. I applied, couldn't get in the second year. But by the time I applied the third time, it was clear I was going to be a successful executive. So they'll let me in and then take credit for everything that happens after, and then try to bill me through the Alumni Association for the rest of my life.
And this is Stanford.
Yeah, Stanford Business School. So I didn't fall for it. The real cost of all of this non-education that I got in those two places is Gates, Balmer, Jobs, Ellison, the Google boys, Zuckerberg. All these guys quit early and got a head start, and they didn't lose some of the most hormonal, high energy, testosterone-laced, I can do anything, wonderfully ignorant of the way things should be, and I got way behind them. I lost 6 years to the people who never. Michael Dell, I mean, he got started, and I was still screwing around in class listening to some professor tell me that we ought to have common parking between management and the workers. And I thought, well, you know what? When there are bomb threats and the union guys are beating people up, I don't necessarily want to be management walking through that parking lot. Sir, I don't think you understand. So that's the business school. Business school is a classic example of, really, every other graduate degree. If you're a doctor, you get the gloves on and you check every orifice, and you're doing rounds while you're learning how to be a doctor. A chemist, you're in there with Dr. Beaker blowing things up, and a physicist, you're smashing atoms all day. You take a graduate degree in just about any. English, you're writing, reading English, speaking it every now and then. We're all learning how to speak English. But you go to a business school and you don't buy anything, you don't sell anything, you don't make anything, you don't raise any money, you don't spend any money, you don't hire anybody, you don't review anybody, you don't fire anybody, you don't do anything that you do. It's like learning golf by watching videos. It's like listening to Jack Nicklaus lectures, and reading some books about how to hit a golf ball, and you walk up to the first tee lined with spectators and you skull one right in the crowd and take somebody out. And that's what MBAs come out doing. But they learned, let's stop hiring them out of school and actually teaching them something. Let's wait till they've worked 3 or 4 years and then take 2 of the most precious years out of their business career, make them pay huge after-tax money for tuition, and then put them back out there and take credit for everything else that happens there. It's criminal, and you can see by the student loan debt that clearly the price, the ROI on that investment sucks.
For sure.
Sucks really bad.
Yeah.
And it sucks for the country because we lose all of those. Plus, they indoctrinate them into a victimhood and everybody deserves something for free mentality, and that the government is the answer, not private sector, and the hard work and personal responsibility of every individual.
Yeah. So you have 4 sons, and you offered them a deal surrounding college. What was that deal?
The deal was you can go to college, and they were all straight A students, great athletes, great human beings, all the rest of it. And I said, listen, if you want to go to college, you got to get a STEM degree: science, technology, engineering, math. None of this, stuff.
Yeah.
None of this social studies stuff, and not even economics, because I use so little of my economics degree. And so I said, I will pay all of that as long as you're doing a STEM degree and getting passing grades. Second you stop, the door locks are changed, you're out, you're on your own, go get them, have fun, and have a good life. And I said, for every year you don't go, including all 4 years, I will pay you half of room, board, and tuition to get you started in a job.
And did any of them take it?
2 of them finished their degrees in 3 years. Maverick was playing golf, and he was studying. He was really studying for his career at Stanford, and so 2 of them got paid a nice little bag of money because they got done a year early.
Yeah, got you. And so you met some of your co-founders at Stanford Business School, so you can't be totally, averse to business school, right?
I met one of them.
Okay.
He was always the last guy at the party, as I guess apparently I was, because that's where I met him. And we started 2 companies. One made it, one didn't, and it was helpful. But we met Andy. He was a graduate student through a little article we saw, and that Vinod saw in a computer magazine. He just happened to be at Stanford, but we didn't know him at Stanford. He didn't go to the business school. He was getting his PhD in computer science.
I see. Yeah. So can you walk us through how that all started? What opportunity you saw in the marketplace to be able to start a company like this?
I didn't know what I was doing. 10 months before, I'd gone to work at a computer company, the first company to put Unix on a microprocessor, and it was called Onyx Systems, and I was doing manufacturing for them, and it was easy. I saved them millions of dollars just by being brain dead obvious, like why all those disk drives not working well. Our sister company said, well, we'll send them back to the sister company, give them one of our computers and show them that they don't work and tell them, fix it. And we don't want to see these until they pass on our computer. Oh, millions of dollars of inventory got turned into cash because of that simple little, and they all thought I was a genius. Excuse me. So anyhow.
It was all that Harvard and Stanford teaching you.
Right. By the way, not one school I've ever met has promised to raise your IQ. Have you noticed that?
Now that you say it, yeah.
Yeah, they will teach you how to smoke dope, how to procreate, how to go to the school hospital to get penicillin, all those other things. Tailgate, they'll teach you a whole bunch of things that you can learn anyhow. You don't need a campus to go do that. So anyhow, Vinod called me up one day after we had started our other company. He said, hey, let's go meet Andy. We can go build these workstations for him, because he had invented the Stanford University Network Workstation, and he was building them in his office. He was inserting the chips and programming the EEPROMs and doing it. We said, I can manufacture these in volume, and Vinod says, I've been in a workstation company before, let's go start it. So the 3 of us started, and then we tracked down Bill Joy, brought him on board as the 4th founder, and the thing took off really. We started in February 1982, February 24th, and by May we were profitable. And the first fiscal year, which started July 1st, we did, I think, about 8.9 million, and then we did, I can't remember the numbers anymore, 39 million, then we did 115 million, then we did 250, then we did 500, then we did $1 billion. So that was our progression as a hardware company. So it was pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. And you make it sound pretty easy, scaling to $1 billion in 5 or 6 years. What difficulties did you guys face along the way?
Oh, there were a lot, but I don't know. It was, we were all single. We were all working 1 million hours. We all loved just working. I worked. I didn't quite sleep in the place like Elon, but might as well have. It would have saved me time, but the valley wasn't that congested at the time, so I could get home and fall asleep. I would walk down the hall in my place. I lived alone. It was a long hall, and I could find the next morning where I dropped clothes on the way to bed, and just boom, I was asleep. It's just the way it was. But it was great. There were a lot of problems. I made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of right calls. The team was amazing. I surrounded myself. I always thought, if I'm not the dumbest person in the room, I haven't done a good job hiring. It wasn't hard. I was able to hire a lot of people dumber than me, and they all made me look good. And I just got out of their way. I had this inverted org chart mentality that I work for them. What do you need? What do you think we should do? And that's how I managed. I made sure we got them the resources. I learned to trust some people and to not trust others, and those who I didn't trust, you're out. And people really enjoyed that. I think if you go do a survey, you're going to get a 99% hit rate, that maybe 95%, I don't know. This was the best place I ever worked. And it was because I was ignorant enough of what computers were and what they did and how they worked that I enabled them. That's probably also the downfall, because I missed the whole Cisco thing. We missed I was trying to be an arms supplier to all the cloud companies. Meanwhile, the cloud companies, backward integrated and took us out. So yeah, I was kind of dumb in some ways and sort of brilliant in other ways. In general, I would say Sun Microsystems invented more great technology, invented more great management styles, pushed the concept of sharing and open source more than any other company out there. And therefore, I think if you look back, Steve Jobs certainly gets probably legacy number one, and certainly on the consumer side. Intel and Fairchild and Sun Microsystems maybe get some leadership positions on the commercial side of computing. And we'll have to wait until, these are the olden days before anybody really judges all of us. I sent a note to Mark Andreessen recently after Twitter was, censoring a bunch of conservative voices, and this was a couple years back before Elon got it, and I said, Mark, do you ever rue the day we put Java with the Netscape browser and created the internet? And he didn't respond. I don't know that there is a good answer. I mean, there's so many great things that our technologies provide, but like any technology misused, it accelerates it all.
Yeah.
Now we got deep fake AI technology, and I tell my boys, if it's behind a piece of glass, I don't care whether it's a billboard, the television, your computer, or a phone or anything, I said you can't trust it. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but you don't know if it's a deep fake. You don't know if it's a lie. You don't know if it really happened. Yeah. And unless you see, felt, used your sixth senses to figure out whether something's real in real life, then you gotta take it with a little bit of a grain of salt and a heavy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to go back to, you touched on this briefly, but you were a very young CEO and you transitioned from entrepreneur to manager very quickly. What did that transition look like, and how did you manage that?
Yeah, so my first job, I was 3 days in Centralia, Illinois, and they sent me out back to get all this old capital equipment that was just rusting in waist-high weeds in the back at, it was about 9,500 degrees in the middle of Centralia, Illinois, and they gave me 2 summer students to go manage. So I said, let's go, we got to clean this up. So we're hauling stuff around, my shirt is sweating, and I'm, a hockey player, I'm loving it, and these 2 kids are like, holy mackerel. And they just got all grumpy. I said, come on guys, you're younger than me, you should be able to handle this. I was walking through the factory after about 3 days, and a guy walked up, a dad of one of these kids walked up and literally puts his hand on my shoulder and puts me up against the wall. By the way, I've never told this story publicly, but he said, what are you doing to my kid? I go, what do you mean? My kid out back. You're going to kill him. It's hot out there. You don't do that. And he said, you leave my kid alone. I said, I'm doing exactly what he's doing and more. He said, did you hear me? And then he walked away. This is a union guy, and I'm non-union, I'm management, and I learned a lot. I mean, it was so, and then I was working with all of my people building these Corvette hoods, and I'm running around. One will say, my glove's got a hole in it. Another one said, There's no parts. There's forklift driver isn't here. And then another one would say, I don't feel good. And then another one would say, my anvil's jammed, the little plunger on the anvil jammed for the riveting machine. And I'd say, well, what do I do? She says, you got to fix it. Well, what do I do? You got to take it out. So how do I do that? She shows me. And I take the anvil and I run over to facility or maintenance, and they take it apart, oil it, grease it up, all the rest of it, and give it back to me. And then I run back, put it in. Anyhow, I'm doing this. I'm running around. I'm just exhausted by the end of the day doing this. Everybody's hollering at me. And after 2 weeks, my team stopped asking me for anything. Just nothing. And I did one thing right. One lady came in and she was working, she was crying, and I said, hey, come on, let's go sit down in the lunchroom. And I said, what's wrong? What's going on? Is there anything I can do? And she was crying about what was going on in her home life. And I said, hey, if you need to take the day off, do it, whatever, but if I can do anything, let me know. She says, oh, I'll be all right. She goes back and works. And word got out how I handled that. And anyhow, at the end of about 2 weeks, all of a sudden, nothing was required of me. I just stood there. I actually grabbed a broom to try and sweep the dust off, and a union foreman came, or a union guy came and said, you can't take a job from a union guy, put the broom down. And so everything was running. The forklift driver showed up on time, everything worked right. Everybody had extra gloves on hand if they got a hole in it. And I went over to the anvil lady and I said, how come your anvil doesn't jam anymore? And she says, oh, it jams. And she hits on it and it jams. And then she says, watch. She reaches over her head, grabs a rubber malleted hammer on a cabinet without even looking, hits the side of the anvil, it pops loose, and then she throws the anvil up, it does 3 loops and lands exactly where it was. I said, you've done that before, haven't you? And she said, we just wanted to see, were you going to work for us, or did you think we worked for you? And so after that, management became very, very easy.
So that transferred pretty well to Sun.
That was a 3 weeks out of college. I knew more about management than anybody on Harvard campus. And I mean, what can a tenured professor teach you about anything in capitalism? I mean, when you've checked out and you've totally lost. And then, after business school, I just started climbing the ranks, and it just sort of happened. And then I ended up at Sun, and if you're there early, everybody works for you. So that was sort of, and I had really good HR directors everybody has a coach in sports. Everybody in business should have a coach. Tiger Woods has 9 coaches. My son, Maverick, has 9 coaches doing different things. A head coach, a swing coach, a phys ed coach, a nutrition coach, data coach. You've got all these people. And a CEO has no coaches. He's got no peers. He's got a bunch of stakeholders and bosses called board members, and a whole bunch of staff who all want more money and more power and more position, and you're all alone. You gotta have coaches. So they were good about getting me to have independent coaches all along the way. And I worked with each one of them for 3-6 months, and then waited, and then bring another one in, and I learned a lot from each one of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And not only, you were a great manager, but you also were able to instill a certain culture in Sun. You guys were famous for your dress code. You guys had, some fun pranks that you pulled. You had a good, tagline. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, our dress code was "you must." If you came in naked, we send you home. I remember when just before I became CEO, a VP from DEC told one of our engineers he couldn't wear a skirt. And I went to John and I said, John, why do you wear a skirt? He goes, well, we're here, these computers are hot, they're under the desk, and a skirt, it just keeps everything cool. Okay, I'm not going to ask anymore. You can wear whatever you want. You can wear whatever you want. But he tried to change the dress code to, guys can't wear skirts. I don't care. And I shouldn't have asked. And I learned my lesson. Do whatever you want to do. But that's just the way we were. Kick butt, have fun was our tagline. if you're going to work, you're going to be doing more hours working than any other activity. And if you're not having fun, you got a bad life. It was okay to laugh and have fun and enjoy. You know, I managed through taglines and, you know, agree and commit, disagree and commit, or get the heck out of the way. The right answer is the best answer, wrong answer is second best, no answer is a disaster. You know, and participative but not consensus is how we operate. And all of these things, and I built the culture around what I thought my people on the assembly line would have liked. You know, because when you get out of the way, but you set the ground rules, the values, the guidelines, all the rest of it, it turns out that the leaves on a tree are where all the work happens. They're the photosynthetic layer that's, you know, creating, turning dirt into tree. And what happens when you do a layoff, all the managers go tell all the branches to cut all the leaves off. And so I always had a rule of 11. I wanted at least 11 direct reports so that we had very little bark, very little trunk, very little branches, and we were much more likely to withstand a windstorm when everybody's doing work, not just holding up dead limbs. So it's those kinds of things were just, I could talk for decades about, you know, what we did at management. And I think the reason why there are so many former Sun CEOs is they picked up on a lot of this stuff, and it works. Yeah. Letting people do their thing works. Now, I would rather be Steve Jobs and just be smarter than anybody else, or Elon Musk just being a freaking genius. There are some people that, you know, my management style probably wouldn't be as effective with them because they're so darn smart. And I'm in awe of the genius that these guys are, but I was a genius for making do with a minimum amount of IQ points.
Yeah. And you didn't want to be CEO at first.
No, I never did. My dad worked hard. He was vice chairman of American Motors, president of AMF, ran an ad agency. He saw one sporting event of mine in my entire life, and I played sports all of my spare time. And it was a hockey game. I hit the post, didn't score. I was so bummed out I didn't score for Dad. And I thought, I'm never going to do that with my kids. I'm going to be there for them, and I'm not going to work that hard. And I'll be a good number two. I'll be perfect radar, or, you know, Friday, or who, you know, you name your favorite sidekick. And I was going to make my CEO successful, but I was not going to. I also knew the responsibility. I've always said, if you want to hire somebody into a tough job, bring everybody who's capable into the room, sit them down, explain the charter, the responsibilities, and the challenges of the job, and then ask anybody who wants to do it to please stand up. Whoever stands up, say, all right, now leave the room and pick your leader from the people who are smart enough to know that's a hard job. And and CEO is the hardest of all, by far. And, you know, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to spend my whole life doing that. And somehow, you know, they came in and asked Vinod and the president to step down and me to take over temporarily 2 years to the day after we started the company. And I said, all right, here's my resignation letter. I'll do it for as long as you want. Let's go find the new guy. When I made that statement, my staff voted 8-0. Scott, you are a good guy. We want you to stay, but we got to go get a new CEO. 10 months later, we'd sorted the ship, put the ship back, because when I took over, we were doing $2 million a month and losing $500,000, and everything was blowing up on the factory floor. We had all kinds of issues, leadership issues, and by the time that turned around, we're rocking and rolling again. And so they brought in this new guy, the board did, and Kodak, a potential investor, said, we're not investing if that guy comes in, and they sent a guy in to investigate, Dick Kleinhans, wonderful guy. Just my favorite, short Mr. Magoo kind of manufacturing guy, just salt of the earth. Every third word was the F-bomb, and he was just, I just loved the guy. He hauls me aside and he said, I've interviewed everybody here. We're going to make the investment, but only if you're CEO, and we have a 5-year veto vote on any other new CEO. But you got to start, I won't say exactly how I explain, you got to man up a little bit, buddy. You got to start taking control and lead this place, and don't let anybody push you around, blah, blah, blah. And he gave me this speech. And I went home and I said to my mom, I didn't want this job. They want me to go do it. because I told him, you thought I was a wimp. I said, I'm going to go talk to my mom. So I went and talked to my mom. She said, just do it for a year or two and then you can quit. And 30 years later, I finally got out of there. But it wasn't something I wanted to do because I know the responsibility. And I'm not like Larry Ellison, who was brilliant. He hired the greatest second in command, Safra Katz, and she's made his life wonderful, right? I wasn't ever smart enough to do it. I just wanted to outwork everybody else in the company so that nobody else felt, like I wasn't working. And it was hard. And so I eventually, when the boys were 2, 4, I didn't get married until I was 39, and the boys were 2, 4, 6, and 8. I went into the board and said, I'm done. I don't want my boys to go through life and have me only see one hockey game, And so I stepped down to chairman, and then it was bought 5 years later.
Yeah. I want to take a few steps back and talk about, you guys were profitable in 3 or 4 months, whereas nowadays startups, most of them aren't profitable for years. What do you think? Do you think that sustainable business model that you guys had in the 80s is kind of gone now, or do you still think that's possible?
Well, I think what's happened is TCP/IP, the Ethernet, Java, Wi-Fi, everything moves at the speed of, there are no more physical and geographic barriers. And so when things tip, they tip globally, and they tip globally. And so the marketing dollars, the manufacturing dollars, the competition, all the rest of it, it's just greater than it was back then. And we had a little niche called engineering workstations in North America, and we could start a company and get profitable. Now, the VCs have trillions of dollars, the oligarchs have trillions of dollars, the government is so intrusive, and they can make or break you. They made Elon Musk, right? Big subsidies on solar, big subsidies on Teslas, bought a whole bunch of SpaceX. They're the big customer for the boring machine, all the rest of it. Yeah. And now when he gets a little bit, sideways, they want to go take him out. The governments are a disaster for free market capitalism and competition and all the rest of it. So now it just takes a big nickel to get things going. A massive number. So I think that's why you see this. So there's a lot of huge failures. I invested $25,000 in a company recently that at about a $50 million valuation, and the market cap got up over $8 billion, and they raised $1.2 billion or something like that. And I wasn't paying attention because I just invested in the head. And they said, all right, your stock is worthless. We've sold the company, and only the preferred got 40% of their return. So it did one of these. They went and spent all that money. I don't think they ever got profitable, but their market cap got up. That kind of stuff happens. Fortunately, I only had 25,000. Or I wish I'd sold in the secondary market, when all this silliness is going on.
Very true. Yeah. I also want to talk about one of the other big cultural things about Sun, sharing. You were huge on sharing, whether it be IP with other companies, with everybody, or stock options with employees. Sharing was one of the biggest things. It was ingrained in Sun culture. Why? Because we look at Apple now, and you've talked about Steve Jobs. They are not sharers. They do not like to share. It's all closed. But you were all open source. So.
Yeah, part of the problem was I went to business school and an undergraduate and finished, and I was way behind. And so was Sun, therefore, in terms of getting started. And I give the open source credit not to me or anybody else, but Bill Joy. Bill was doing open source Berkeley Unix, and he brought that to Sun. And Bill came in and said, hey, we've invented the network file system. And the DEC president said, oh, well, we can make a lot of money. He goes, well, we're going to open source it. And he goes, you can't do that. Source codes are corporate jewels. That's what it was. And Bill said, what good is a telephone that doesn't connect to another phone? And how are they going to connect if they don't have the connection code? And what good is a network file system if it doesn't network to anything else? We're open sourcing it.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, his swan song. And so we couldn't compete against DEC, IBM, Hewlett Packard, Intel, and Microsoft by being proprietary.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. And besides, I thought, you know what, we can do just fine. We may not become megalomaniacs with, oligarchic, like, trillion-dollar valuations, but we can do pretty darn well, and we can do good things for the world. And, we were the first company to ship TCP IP on every computer we shipped. We invented NFS. We invented Java. These are all open source technologies.
Yeah.
We popularized Unix. We did a ton of things, and Unix was all open. In fact, one of the biggest strategic mistakes I made, and I loved AT&T and they were great partners, but they didn't understand open and they didn't understand computers like we did. We were getting beat up by OSF, Open Software Foundation, which was IBM, DEC, and Hewlett Packard. We called it Oppose Sun Forever. And they were creating a separate strain of Unix. And we were sort of worried that, even though Solaris was, or it was called Sun OS at the time, was the winner, right now we were worried that the three of them ganging up it was, anti-competitive, literally, the way they were going after us. And we went to AT&T, which had System 5, Unix System 5, which is the original, and they have all the patents. And we said, why don't we put it together? And so Bill Joy wrote AT&T Unix System 5 Release 4. In 48 hours, he stayed up 2 nights and wrote the whole, he threw out one command, brought in another one, documented, and he handed us this encyclopedia in 2 days and said, this is System 5 Release 4. Single-handedly, he did that. And we said to AT&T, now we want to open source it like Sun OS was. And they said no. That's how Linux happened.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the one time we didn't share, we got, basically blasted.
Killed, yeah.
Blasted.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't kill us, but it, that might have been a mortal wound. It was a mortal wound. And, history is, I don't know what we could have done better. Maybe we just grinded it out with Sun OS and I don't know. It was tough.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tree falls on you, and it sort of did there.
Yep. So you talked about all of the competitors. Who do you think? Because looking back, Microsoft was kind of your arch nemesis. Do you think they were your biggest competitors at the time as well, or were you kind of just, attacking them for strategic purposes?
Microsoft in the old days was a major parachute on the back of the car for all of technology. It's very different now. Satya, former Sun, is running the joint, and he's done some amazing things with that, and he's opened it up a lot and kind of played nicer with everybody. Gates and Balmer just weren't nice. Fine, that's competition, all the rest of it, I get it. And Balmer's 5th richest guy in the world or something like that. Congratulations. I'm here on this crappy little deck here in Tahoe.
Wouldn't say crappy though.
Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, it's pretty nice.
I did fine.
Yes,
I'm not complaining, but I think we did more. Microsoft slowed everything down. We had an antitrust suit against them. I think it's the largest antitrust suit ever.
You were in court, right next to Bill Gates.
Yeah, $2.4 billion settlement, which I think still to this day is the largest antitrust. There's no question they were a monopoly. They operated monopolistically, and $2.4 billion is a tribute to that. But that didn't cover all that they slowed the world down on. And just what happened with all of us fixing our Microsoft bugs and security breaches and all the rest of it, because it was closed source. If there's a secret or a loophole or a backdoor in open source, everybody will see it because it's like a glass.
It gets fixed a lot
it's
faster.
A glass Trojan horse. You can't. So everything's innovates better. You got only Redmond engineers were looking at the source code for Microsoft, and it wasn't going to be good, and it wasn't good, and it still isn't good, and so but Steve came along and did a better proprietary one, so he wasn't much help on all of that. So, Linux is the better way. Now Google is doing, open source phone OSs and that sort of thing. So the world learned from us, but we didn't make the money on it like we could have or should have or whatever. I made a lot of mistakes, but I don't regret. I didn't do anything nefariously. So there were no scandals that came out of Sun.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Considering there were
a lot of
pretty much every tech company now has had something happen.
There were a lot of perp walks in my day, so but they weren't Sun Microsystems.
Yeah. Can you talk about how the Microsoft antitrust case happened? How did you end up sitting right next to Bill Gates, kind of crapping on his company?
That wasn't the antitrust case. That was a hearing, and they had Strom Thurmond, and they had cue cards for him with font this big, and they wheeled him to the. We've had two people that were too old in government for a long time, and other. They didn't know what they were talking about. It was all theater. But I was sitting next to Bill Gates. I remember Netscape. Jim Barksdale was there. And it was Michael Dell was there. It was the first time I'd ever been in a hearing, and I was not impressed.
That's where it all started.
Yeah.
Also, okay, so at its peak, Sun was valued at, I think, 10 times revenue at $200 billion, whereas in the end it sold to Oracle for, as we talked about, around $7.5 billion. Can you talk more about how the dot-com bubble specifically affected Sun?
Well, first of all, $200 billion is not an accurate valuation for a hardware company, because at 10 times revenues you'd have to ship 100% of your revenues to the shareholders to give them a 10-year payback. And to do that, you'd have to have your revenue stay the same for 10 years, which is hard to do in any business. You'd have to have zero cost of goods sold, because that'll last. You have to have no sales, engineering, or G&A, and then you have to pay no taxes, all of which is, and then still maintain that, and then you have to get the shareholders to say, all right, 100% is going to go to the shareholders, and that's just highly unlikely. But now look at NVIDIA. I don't even know what the numbers are. It's off the charts, but so if we'd been on a more, and I had a problem with, I had some management who were pumping the market up because they were feeling rich, and I made that comment publicly, like, hey, shareholders, what are you thinking, right?
Yeah,
it's
like
just
Elon Musk tweeting,
speculating. It's just speculation they were doing, and the problem is our morale tends to follow the stock price, and if I had to do it over again, I would have wished I could have been a private company and just managed through all of it without because we charted employee morale and the stock price, and I said, where's the other line? And they said, it's right on top of the first line. There's like 105% correlation with stock price for morale. So that made it harder. But I stepped down 5 years before we sold it, and we were doing nice. We had $7 billion of cash in the bank. We were growing. Gross margins were 48%. We were gaining share, all the rest of it. But I didn't want to do it anymore. So I stepped down as CEO, and I'm not saying I could have done better, but it's a hard business. But I didn't have the energy. So I don't really know how it all happened, because board members only know so much, and things were happening in staff meetings that I wasn't.
Do you think if you were still in charge, it could have gone on for longer if you didn't have your kids?
I couldn't do it anymore. I won't. And those are all ifs. I don't do ifs. It's you can spend a lot of time. If I had known what was going to happen, I would have been Cisco. I would have been EMC. I would have been AWS. I would have been all of those things, because I would have been Elon Musk if I could have seen the future. And I'm not. I didn't. But you know what? legacy is pretty darn good.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if every CEO did as well as I did, we'd be all right. Right?
I think we'd be more than all right, but yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah. And can you talk about the two offers? IBM offered you, which you guys rejected, and then Oracle finally came in and bought you.
Well, yeah, they didn't offer them to me, but they were solicited, and IBM came in with a public offer. I called Larry Ellison. I was on the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass, the famous island hole, with my wife. And I said, Larry, I got this offer from IBM. The problem with the IBM deal is for every employee that we had, there was an IBM employee with the same job title. So it was like almost complete overlap. And I said, Larry, I wanted my employees to have a better chance. I think this is a bad deal, and I don't think it'll be helpful to you. So can you make me an offer? And so he said, I'll have it to you in 48 hours. And Larry Sonsini gets up at the board meeting and says, I've evaluated the two offers, and the Ellison offer is in every way, shape, and form demonstrably better than the IBM offer. So boom. And that's just how it happened. And the shareholders decide, and the offers decide. So that's how that happened. I mean, I was sad to see it go, but I hadn't been CEO for 5 years.
Of course. Yeah, so you were a big sports guy. You love hockey, love golf. Do you think those skills transfer to business? Do you think there's some things there that you can take advantage of and use when you're a manager in a manager position?
Yeah, I think that's true in most businesses, maybe less so in technology. I guess Zuckerberg's a great athlete and he can kickbox and stuff, whatever. But I think my dad used to say he'd rather hire a B+ student who was a really good competitive athlete than an A+ student who's. But I think it depends on the job and all the rest of it. But I do like the competitiveness and the teamwork orientation that comes with being an athlete.
Yeah. What about the mental part, golf especially?
I don't know. I think golf teaches you to swear under your breath a lot.
Well, that's good.
Which is
that can be beneficial.
That's a useful.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think doing things, competing, staying in shape. I tell you, being CEO is a physical activity, and if you're not in good shape, you don't have the energy. That's going to cost you. So, I don't think you see too many CEOs who. Bill Gates wasn't exactly the epitome of
athlete.
He is proof that you can't buy a golf game. Sorry.
Still taking jabs. What, 20 years later?
I don't say Balmer and Butthead anymore.
That's good. That's a good one. Oh man, yeah. So let's talk about what you're doing now. I think you co-founded Curriki, which is an education platform, K through 12. You're on the board of I think 30 plus companies advising.
Let me tell you what I'm doing now. I'm kind of spearheading Curriki.org, which is on phase 4 of our journey to try and do things that support and encourage real-time scored online learning experiences so that we don't have to go to government schools. And you can read about that on the website. We're between phases 3 and 4 this summer, and we'll be coming out again in the fall. I'm at Flume Ventures, which is a venture startup here in Incline Village, Nevada, and supporting Nevada, and I'm an operating partner in that. Former son, Matt Nordby's running it, really a cool operation, and we're all about making investments where we can add value with operating people like myself and Imran Khan and others helping out. I'm advising a whole bunch of companies. I don't go on the board. I don't want to be in governance. I'll do stewardship as a free advisor. I work for stock options, and I won't ask for them, but if you give them to me, I'll take them, and then I prioritize by basically who has the most stock options that are worth the most. Because I don't know how else to, if you do it for no salary, no title, no health care, I'm a free good. There's infinite demand, so I do that, and there's a lot of time spent on that. And it's funny. All of a sudden Ford truck, I made $7-8 million on my Ford truck options because I got involved with them really early. Ex-Sun guy started at Los Angeles, and so that worked out. I didn't pay any attention to it, and all of a sudden he says, "Hey, we're going public and you're rich." And I said, "Thank you." And I found another one two weeks ago, Lambda Labs, and I looked it up, and at their latest financing, I made $8-9 million on Lambda Labs just by being an advisor over the last few years. So, and then there's a lot that are gone.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been a nice environment, and I've never taken any cash from any of the companies. In fact, I've only given them cash to buy my options, which I like because I don't want to take cash from the companies, and I want to only work for the CEO, not the investors.
Yes.
So I'm working for the CEO, and I want the CEO to be successful. So that's fun being an advisor. And then I used to caddy for Maverick. He won't let me anywhere near his bag, and he doesn't even like to watch me hit the ball anymore. But I was there, kind of his original Uber agent when he got started, and I loved kicking him off, his career off. And then he got his team, and his team all says, "Dad, get out of here. We don't want Dad because Mav's paying us for all that stuff you would have done." But now I get to watch him, so that's fun too.
Yes.
My second son is totally independent, and he works for Ford, and works on their factory-to-car network, and is computer science from Stanford. Just a great kid. And then my third son just started a software company called Little Horse. Look it up, littlehorse.io. He's found a way to make microservice-based applications really super effective, built a really great software platform. He did Stanford CS in 3 years and said the last 2 years were a waste of his time.
Could have gotten that half tuition.
Yeah, he could have gotten 2 more years of, he could have gotten a full year of tuition, and he reads a textbook a month. He's kind of weird, but really, I mean, he's sort of in that Andy Bechtelsheim, Bill Joy class of engineer, and so I've enjoyed being chairman emeritus on that, and he calls me only 15 times a day, so that's my most burdensome advisory role. And then my youngest son has been doing real estate, buy, fix, flip for the last year, and big announcement. We'll be out in a couple of weeks. I can't tell you. He's making a little career shift. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. You'll see his career shift.
Awesome.
So anyhow, they're all doing great.
Yeah. And so, what does like a normal day look like for you?
Abnormal.
No. Oh, okay.
I mean, what I try to do is get my 18 holes in, 7 o'clock tee time, be home by 9:30, 9:45.
That's the goal. That's everybody. That's my goal.
I try to get a Pilates or workout in every day, Stairmaster 5-6 times a week. And then after that, it's email, phone, Zoom.
Every day is different though?
Yeah, every day is a little different. I try to travel to see Maverick when I can. I got my mom, she's 96, she's in Palo Alto, go visit her. I got friends all over the world. I go to Japan once a year to work on our partnership with JTP, and Little Horse is now a partner there, and Maverick's playing in Zozo, so we're all planning to spend a week with Maverick and JTP in Japan. So there's just stuff like that all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing normal. Susan and I like to rent an RV, and we make up stage names, and I'm not going to tell you mine. But we just travel incognito, and we just
awesome.
love it. We go play golf and drive around in an RV.
Yeah.
We tell everybody
Your wife likes golf?
Oh yeah, she beats me every time. And we meet people and we tell them we hit the lottery, and we spend all the money on an RV for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Just go have fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure I could talk to you for many more hours, but we'll wrap it up. I'll ask you the last question I ask every guest on this podcast. If you could go back in time and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I I can't imagine that. I would worry that if I did something different, that I wouldn't turn out and be where I am now. Because I don't know anybody who's got a better wife in all ways. I don't know anybody I would trade my 4 boys for in any way, shape, or form. I've got the smallest little cabin here on Lake Shore, and I wouldn't trade it for any mansion up and down the beach here. And I just can't imagine that I would want to alter the future from when I was 20.
Yeah.
It's all been, not that I haven't made huge mistakes and done dumb things, all the rest of it, but it's just been perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, if I was you, I'd probably think the same thing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining Tahoe Minds. Great interview. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, follow. And make sure to share with 1 or 2 friends who you think will be really interested in Scott's incredible story. And I will see you guys in the next episode.